Call the Destin Fire Control District Board of Fire Commissioners meeting to order. We're at 848 Airport Road, Destin, Florida, November 14, 2017 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is open to the public. We have 4 commissioners here, one excused, absent, Mike Buckingham. He has an illness in the family, so he's excused, and our prayers and thoughts were with him and his mother. So the floor is open now for public comment. If anybody would like to make any comment from the public, the floor is yours. Seeing none, the floor is now closed for public comment. Review of the minutes, the regular meeting on October 10th, 2017.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of October 10th, 2017. Second.
I have a motion to approve the regular meeting October 10th and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Review of the financial report, September 30th, 2017 and October 31st, 2017.
At our last meeting, the September 30th financial statement was approved on a preliminary basis, as we needed a little more time to finish for our year-end. We have finished our year-end at this point. All adjustments have been made, with the exception of anything to do with liabilities or assets for the pension trust. As stated last month, the pension trust liabilities are adjusted per the actuarial statement, which has not been completed at this point by Foster & Foster. When that report is finished, I will make the adjustments in our accounting system and forward those to the auditor so they can complete their work. But I am presenting these statements, this statement at this time as the final statement for September 30th. And then when the auditor presents their audited report, it'll include those pension adjustments. So we finished the fiscal year with a cash position of under $6 million. Now this is designated to impact fees, to the asset fund, to various other items that you'll see as you go through the balance sheet. Accounts receivable at fiscal year end are all considered collectible. Fixed assets have been adjusted for all acquisitions, all donated items, and any dispositions, as well as the recording of depreciation on all assets for the fiscal year. Liabilities, as mentioned at the last meeting, are all adjusted for fiscal year end. Accrued wages payable, compensated absence, OPEB liability, they've all been adjusted, which leaves the equity section of our balance sheet. And the equity section details the net worth of the district and where that net worth is allocated to. So you'll see as you go through $3 million for fixed assets, $1.1 million for an impact fee fund reserved for that. That is a restricted fund. Committed funds of compensation fund, unemployment fund, asset fund, junior lifeguard program fund. That is a new fund that was established this year as we decided to have a break-even program. So the excess revenue we receive from that fund will carry forward should the program need it in the future. Unassigned fund and net revenue over expenditures. If we go on to the next 6 pages, which is the review of revenue versus expenditure versus budget, I'm not going to go through all of these items. I'd actually like to talk about the ending, where the district ended, which will be page, I believe it's page 13 it is. You'll see net revenue over expenditures of the district of $225,000. And you can see how that is built. You have the budget, you have non-general fund items, which is we use asset fund to pay for some assets. We brought in more revenue for the impact fund, so we had to transfer that 150 into the impact fund. There's non-budgeted items which have to be presented in the year-end financial statement, but they're not cash item. Depreciation is not a cash item. But all of that taken into effect gives us the ending point where the district falls at $225,000. We made budget adjustments through the year, so with the exception of $100 or $4 here, all items are really in line with our budget. So if there's any specific questions in regards to the financial statement presented for the fiscal year, and I can answer that at this point.
Can you look at page 11, total operating expenditures? Is that, those lines correct there?
Yes, and the reason total operating expenditures appears low, $489,000, is if you go up midway within that column, you'll see the transfer to asset fund,
Oh, okay.
and then you'll see a negative amount to transfer to asset fund. I actually played with that in putting together this, played with the idea of a different presentation for that item I might consider for our current fiscal year, because it does distort, I guess you could say, the total operating expenditures, which should be higher, which should show higher. So our auditors will actually, all of our information has been given to the auditors. They will come in for their on-site work beginning tomorrow. It normally takes them about a week of on-site work and then a few months to finish up everything and wait for the pension information. I'm not gonna say at this point when it would be presented. I would say January at the latest would be a presentation of our audit.
So we need to make a motion for the September 30th financial report separate
Yes.
this time.
I move that we approve the September 30, 2016-17 financial report.
Second.
We got a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Unanimous?
Motion approved October 31st, 2017.
All right.
Financial report.
Second.
Second, okay. Got a motion to approve October 31st, 2017. And a second, any discussion? Seeing none? Bill, all in favor? Aye. Approved, unanimous. All right. So there's no old business to discuss at this time. Moving on to the chief reports, beach safety update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have that much other than the vehicles are up for bid. If you got a chance to see them, they're out there in the engine bay. Other than that, I can just go over the annual statistics.
So remind us, when one of the bids due for those vehicles?
20, I was gonna say the 20.
November 28th.
Just looking at the annual statistics, there's really nothing out of the ordinary here, pretty much on par for an average year for the last 5 years. Other than attendance, the beach attendance is a little bit low, and I'd have to attribute that to the hurricanes. We lost a lot of days, beach days with actual attendance, so while the people were in town, they weren't maybe on the beach because we had a lot of closures as well. I did hand you gentlemen out and I'll be more than happy to review those numbers, but an article, and last meeting we kind of discussed the drowning we had in September. We used terms like active drowning and passive drowning, and just to paraphrase this article, statement put out by the World Health Organization on what is a drowning. The example on the bottom of the middle column, first page, says, similarly, there is no medical recording of a near injury from a fall. Either the person survives the fall, is injured in the fall, or dies in the fall. And the reason that's pertinent is that we had 2 drownings this year on the beach, and with 2 million people, our average is 1 in a million. No matter how we want to split hairs, whether it's active, passive, dry, wet drowning, that's happening in our community. And the national average, Jack was well aware, it's 1 in 18 million, so we are very far behind the curve. But if there's any questions on those numbers, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John. I'll review that. Any questions for beach safety? Seeing none, moving on to the training report. Chief?
Yes, sir. You have it in front of you. You'll see that the guys obtained 32 hours of training this past month. 8 hours of that would be attributed to the Herbert Field training. We had a big training out at Herbert Field where we were invited, as well as 3 other county all fire departments in the adjoining 3 counties, from Escambia over to Walton, so it's basically 4. I think it was really good. I think the guys learned a lot, aircraft firefighting as well as a lot of other standard drills that they performed. But it was a great time for the guys and the firefighters to get together, kind of learn from each other, the different skills that each set is able to bring to the table. Our guys do run more calls and medicals, vehicle accidents, fires, probably compared to Herbert Field, what they run. They'll run a lot more aircraft stuff. So it's really a good learning opportunity. Not all the crews were able to go out, so we sent 1 truck because it was only for 3 days, and the amount of training that we had, we only sent 1 truck, and then the next time we're going to try to rotate the other ones in. But I think overall it was a good month for training. They got a lot of hours in, and that's kind of odd. Normally in October our hours are down because we have fire prevention as well. But this month they were able to knock out quite a bit. But we'll be doing hose testing and some other stuff this month to kind of make up for some of that. So, but good job this past month.
Do we reciprocate and let them come over and train with us?
Oh, yes, sir.
Do we always invite them?
We actually, during different periods during the year, outside of the summer, we'll utilize Herbert Field's training facility so our guys are training at what's considered a facility. ISO, when they come in and want to rate or come in and rate us, they look to see how many facility hours we had. And to be considered a facility, you have to meet certain criteria, height of a training tower, so many acres allotted. There's a lot of things that they look for, and Herbert Field has that one that needs it. So does Eglin. But we kind of join with Ocean City and Okaloosa Island and go out there kind of together. So our guys, and when we send, because we can't send both trucks at the same time, so we'll send 1 truck. We need kind of some other people to do work with instead of just our 1 company operating. So we do a multi-company drill. So we'll go with them, and we do that during different periods of time. The field gets to come off occasionally and come and train with us, but it's more of us when we go out there. We can train together with them. The opportunity is there for them to come out and train with us at the same time, utilizing their facility so that we can all get credit for facility training. If they came and trained with us, you can't get that facility training, although we get good training, we wouldn't be able to account for that. So we're able to use their facility, but train together.
Any other discussion? All right, moving on to the inspection report.
Sir, you have the report in front of you. October was fire prevention, so we went to the schools and the daycares and talked with over 1,000 kids. I want to say a big thank you to these guys for helping out and doing all their time and to put in with the kids and all that. So that was a big help, and the kids really enjoy seeing the firemen come up with the truck and all that. So they really enjoy that. So
They came here as well.
they did come here. The
Marching over here.
first grade came here. We normally had first and second, but now they've cut it back to just the first grade. So we'll have 300 and something kids here that come with the first grade and all. So
Good.
everything went great though.
Any new buildings going in?
Um,
Do you know?
not right offhand. There's a couple things in the works, but it hasn't officially been done yet. So
I've come across your Destin. All right.
They are building a drive-through Starbucks.
yes, right through Starbucks is good. It's on my desk.
That's gonna be good. All right. Any other questions? All right. Overtime report, chief. Oh, I'm sorry, response change report. I always get ahead of
Oh,
myself.
that's okay. That's okay. I don't mind at all. You'll see on the very first page, 27, we're down a little as far as our percentage of the 8-minute response time, although we're significantly ahead of what County EMS is producing. Theirs stays around that 50% level. They've only had 1 where it was above it. In ours, we can go up to roughly 85% and down to one month, it was a low of 72 in January. But we're staying at about that average of around 77 to 78%, which I think overall 80% at the bottom is fairly well for what we have in the district that we cover with the 7 miles that we have to cover with the 2 stations and our response time of getting there. The stations are fairly well located, but the geography of our area is difficult. When we go into gated communities and they travel like they do, it takes a while to get to the backside of that community. So that does adversely affect some of that. And as well as when we put the additional station out at the west end, I think you'll see some of our times come down. This percentage will actually go up when we're making it, so our times will go down, response times, so which will be good. The next graph on page 28, you see Station 9 did 169 calls, 81 in Station 10's area, split of 68-32, which is about on par with what we do, about a 65 to 35 split most of the time. In the next chart, you'll see that at Zone 1, it's 558 calls. The next highest zone is Zone 3, which is 509, and Zone 3 is the one that's Main Street to Airport Road, and if you look at that, we know they intersect, but what we mean by airport, Main Street and Airport is where they intersect at 98, so it's a block going up. So it's including Indian Trail, so you could go straight up Main Street. So that's a pretty good sized area, but it's right here where we have the station. That's why putting the one on the west end over there will take care of the highest response area that we have as far as call volume. So that's always point that out. When we look at the next charts on page 30 and 31, you'll see on page 30 that 13% difference in our response change in those alphas, nursing home calls, and animals locked in vehicles. There's still that difference, so 35 calls this past month that we did not respond to, or were not requested for our assistance. And then in the graph below shows the breakdown of those 35 calls. 25 of those were alphas, 9 were at skilled nursing facilities, and there was 1 animal locked in a vehicle, and those did not need our assistance. We ran 260 calls on page 31, we ran 260 calls, and if you break it down as we have discussed in the past, where you talk about multi-threat versus single threat being just medical calls alone, breakdown is roughly 53 and 47%. And then we did actually, our assistance was requested on 18 of those alpha skilled nursing facility animal locked in vehicle calls. So we ran on 13 alphas, 4 skilled nursing facilities, and 1 animal locked. And I attributed it to that. I'll tell you about that one because it doesn't happen a lot where we do respond. This one wasn't, I put it in this spot, but it wasn't really an animal locked in a vehicle, but it was our response to an animal that was in distress. It was a dog that had gotten loose from their owner, I guess, had wandered off, had fallen in someone else's pool, and was being aggressive, so the homeowner couldn't get them out, but they called 911, and that initiated our response to it, and law enforcement. But by the time we arrived, the dog had gotten its way out of the pool, so we didn't have to assist. It's kind of odd. I didn't know where to put that one, so I kind of put it in. It's an animal response of some kind. It was kind of weird. But we're not trained animal control officers, so I'm not sure. We'd have helped. And then the next is the types of calls we respond to as far as medical is concerned. One that's interesting, especially with us receiving the donation or the grant from Firehouse Subs for the new education equipment that we received. If you'll see the other than unknown problem, the highest response types of calls that we respond to in these categories are MVAs, and you'll see for the year 280 of those. So that kind of goes along with those tools. Although we haven't had to put them to use since we've gotten them, but that kind of tells you our percentage of opportunity is great. And that's it.
Questions? Overtime report.
Yes, sir, as I indicated last month, because when we by the time we'd had the meeting, we had called the guys in, we had tropical storm hurricane that was coming in, and we had called back enough people so that we could staff the additional apparatus, and that's the overtime that you see on this report for this month. I think it was money well spent for the possibility of what we were facing. Fortunate that we didn't have to actually put a lot of that in use, but they were busy that night. But it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Any questions? Good job. All right, new business, beach safety agreement with the county.
Yes, sir, that's still pending. They haven't changed their stance on the sale, as Joe brought up, the capital assets. I have requested a meeting with the decision maker that's telling us no. And we weren't able to connect with that yet. We're hoping after Thanksgiving we'll be able to set a meeting up with whoever the decision maker is saying, no, we can't reinvest that money back in the program, that we have to give that money back to them in order to get the agreement signed. So I want to have a sit-down conversation with them. So we're working on setting that meeting up. Hopefully we can come to some kind of terms on the sale of the capital assets. And we'll see kind of where it goes. Joe and I have some thoughts if they insist and stick their position on how we might address it. But we don't understand how it doesn't make sense that if we're reinvesting the money back into the program that we receive from the sale of those assets, why that isn't a benefit and why it needs to go back to them when it can roll back into the program. Especially after we've requested significantly more money than the money that's being provided. So they were still short in the amount of dollars that we requested, so if we're reinvesting that back in there, it's getting us closer to the dollar amount that we had asked for. So I don't really understand it, so I'll have to have a further conversation with whoever's saying no. It's not the people that we're directly talking to, it's someone that's above them.
If you need help, let me know.
Absolutely, thank you, sir.
Okay, so we'll keep that on there.
Yes, sir.
Request for bids, fire rescue boat, marine fire pump, and engine assembly.
Yes, sir, we put the request out and received one bid back, although the individual that provided the bid, which was 10-8, provided us with two options. They provide us with a full replacement of exactly what we have and put it right back on there with a motor, pump, everything ready to go, and they give us another one. This 10-8 happens to know the apparatus. They've worked on that pump, well, not really the pump, but they've worked on that motor a lot. They're familiar with our fireboat and our setup there. One of their, once we put the bid out, they kind of called back and said, hey chief, can we put in another option there that maybe you guys might want to consider, is that our pump was built to handle being in the salt water. It's brass, it was set up for it, so that we can stay away from the corrosion and those type of issues. So they put the option out that we just replace the motor, have a bell housing built to connect the two, and still utilize our current fire pump. I'll let them break it down, make sure that everything's good, and replace any seals. As they take it apart, replace the seals back, and if everything's in top-notch shape, then put it back together, and that saves us $14,000. I spoke with Battalion Chief Taylor on his thoughts on which option maybe we should look at, and he and I are kind of in agreement that if we would ask the board approve up to replacing the whole setup, and allow us to take the boat up there, him take the pump apart, look at it first, and if that pump is in great shape and the only thing needs is the seals, then replace the seals, put it back together, and save ourselves $14,000 and just replace the motor. So we'd ask for you to approve up to spending the whole amount, but allow us the ability to negotiate it and work with him, and in the event that we don't have to replace the pump, let's not replace the pump. I mean, he's already researched the pump. He said your pump was made to be able to do what it's doing as far as saltwater environment.
And what's the age of the pump? Current?
We bought it in 2003, so it's 14. Yes, both of them are original, but no, we've had no issues with the pump. The issue's been with the motor, and we believe we figured out what the problem with our motor is. I think it's more of a design issue flaw, is that it, and I kind of spoke with Jimmy about it, because I know there are some boats out there that have exhaust that exhaust under the water and don't draw the water back in. Ours has to be drawing the water back in when you go to crank it or start it. There's the back pressure that kind of pulls a little water in, and we kind of get it up on top. We can kind of clear it out, and we have in the past, but over a period of time, it's caused problems with us, and we ended up with some corrosion issues and dropping a valve, which is what caused the fourth cylinder to go out on the fourth cylinder. So during this process, we're going to evaluate repositioning that exhaust so we don't have that issue anymore and put it above the water line. So we shouldn't run across the problems that we've had with this one with the future. So there'll be some, and we put it in the bid, there'll be some manufacturing that has to take place, sheet metal work and that kind of thing. But we would ask the board, if you would, just to approve us up to the whole amount, and if we're able to save $14,000, we can make that call.
Sounds good for me.
I'll make a motion to approve $42,583.
Up to
Up to that.
Up to.
You have a second on the motion?
All right. Got a motion to approve up to $42,583.70. You got a second? Any discussion?
What's the time frame for this, Chief?
Well, if we're able to save, if we're able to utilize our current pump, he can have the motor within a day or two. And he says that's a readily available item. And the time frame of getting, he's gonna have to get the bell housing built, talking about 2 weeks there. So we might be out a month, once we get started on the process, about a month. Now, if we had to replace the whole thing, going the other route and getting the pump and getting the whole thing as a setup, already connected, who he was gonna purchase from was Darley. Darley looks at a 6 to 8 week time frame to get the whole setup for some reason. So they're a little bit longer. But because we're putting a GMC in there, he's able to get that motor, it's a little bit more readily available. And then, getting the bell housing built, he knows he's got a company that'll do it out of California. And get it done that in 2 weeks. So I'm anticipating maybe a month.
Any other discussion? Take a vote, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous. And then west end of District Station.
Yes, sir, I'd ask if the board would allow a table of that discussion as Commissioner Buckingham isn't here. If that's all right.
All right. Everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to bring up something that might be interesting, and I'm not trying to upsert Mike on this, but he's working hard on it, I know. But something I want to look at is when we relocate down there, some people are saying go back to the old station, and then there's some talk of opening up another station. But, if you consider that the old station has got small bays, and I don't think our trucks can get in there now, can you? So basically, it's gonna have to be, and the sheriff's department is pretty much taking that over, and we'd still have to share it with them. I'm leaning on more going to somewhere else with it, and I think Chief was talking about down around
Clement Taylor? Yes,
sort of Taylor Park there, which is, I think would be a huge asset, because the city owns a park like they do the property where the sheriff's department is now. But I'd like to see if we could consider getting maybe a multi-purpose public safety building type with the sheriff's department and us there. And basically, because of Clement Taylor, name it the Clement Taylor Station. And I think that would appease the families, the old Destin families that are in here, that
good idea.
it would still be there. Because there's gonna be more park space. The state has bought some property near there and it's given it to the city. So it's not gonna be taking away parking space, there's gonna be plenty of that.
Still for the public good.
But it's just something that I hope we consider that. Property up there now, that old building, that building was built in '60.
Yes, and it was in the sixties, and it was early sixties.
Yeah, 61, well,
Yeah, right, because that's when we were there.
yeah,
I
so,
like the idea of having the station on the water so we'd have to put our boat right there to also.
yeah, and the sheriff's department could access their boat too, have it there, so.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pluses to that, and I think we ought to explore it.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Mike's got that, you know.
I think he's got some direction on that.
All right, that's it for me.
Seeing none in front of us. The next regular meeting is December 12th, 2017 at 5:30 here at the station. Anything else? All right, this meeting's adjourned.